he said, well, we have guns in the closet. And I was like, oh, shoot, we do. First of all, I know y'all are going to judge me for this, that like, I didn't even know that there were. He probably kept them by his clothes. My clothes are one side, his are on the other. Hello, I'm Kristen. I have been a police wife for almost 10 years and I make these videos on YouTube and I also post on Instagram shorts or reels all about police wife life. I make fun of it, I make relatable content, and I also hopefully provide you with some value and tips on how to live this unique life that we live. I live in Los Angeles and my husband's a Metro police officer and we have two boys, Maverick and Leonidas. They're age 5 and 7. And in today's video, I'm going to talk all about are police officers controlling in relationships? So I cannot speak for all police, I've only married to one, but my experience and knowing other officers and other police wives and girlfriends, my overall answer is no, but I'm going to say that there are moments in my relationship where Rick could be perceived as controlling. I believe that if a police officer that you're dating or married to is controlling, it is typically to keep you safe and because they kind of have this like inside information that is unique. So I'm going to share 3 stories of our police marriage where maybe it will show you kind of this example of how police officers could be controlling in relationships, but it's with a purpose. It isn't, and how maybe I pushed back a little bit on it and challenged Rick, and so you may do the same in your relationship as well. I think it's important to kind of meet people in the middle in relationships. I also want to let you know that a couple of the stories in this that I will be sharing with you are in my Police Wife devotional book, which I will link below. It has 42 relatable stories of my police dating life. Rick and I dated 10 years before getting married, and then these past, I wrote it last year, so it'd be 9 years of marriage, with themes that I think we all have in common when you're dating or married to a cop. And there are Bible verses and prayers in there to help motivate you, inspire you, and keep us focused on a joyful life in our marriage. So, okay, the first example I want to go with is kind of chronologically, when Rick and I first got married, we were actually long distance, and then about 2 years in, we were able to live together, and Rick got us an apartment, and we were childless at this time, but pretty soon we were going to have a baby, and my next example has to do with that time period. But I was home alone. It was summertime, and I'm a professor, so I was home, like, just working. And Rick was working, and I got a knock on the door, and it was a maintenance guy. So I let him in, and he said he needed to see something in our closet, and he did. It was like that's where some electrical unit or something was, so he needed to see it. I was like, okay, whatever. And then he left, no big deal. And so then the next day I'm casually telling Rick what happened, and he's like, you let the maintenance guy in our apartment? Why would you do that? And I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, he knocked on the door, seemed innocent enough. He wanted to see something. It just makes sense. I've had a maintenance guy in my apartment prior to living with Rick, and it wasn't a problem. And he said, well, we have guns in the closet. And I was like, oh, shoot, we do. First of all, I know y'all are going to judge me for this, that like, I didn't even know that there were. He probably kept them by his clothes. My clothes are one side, his are on the other, and I just didn't know. Since then, I want to clarify that we have a safe that they are in ever since having kids. Like, that was really important to me. So they're not just like in the closet where you could see them. And I was like, oh, well, I didn't even know that they are in there, first of all. And then he said he could see them and come back for them later. And I was like, what? Like, who would do that, right? Like, I just don't think the way he does, okay? So I got defensive and was annoyed and told him, like, I can't see things the way that you do. I'm always trying to be honest with you guys. Like, I'm not a perfect wife or girlfriend or whatever, right? So I got defensive, and I think that is very true. We cannot see things that the way that they do, our officers do. So that is very true, and I think we both have to meet in the middle. I have to try to empathize with Rick and maybe sometimes just accept it, that there are things that maybe he can't communicate to me but very well, but he sees something and I don't see it that way because I don't do what he does, right? because he wasn't really able to explain why he felt that way at the time. But sometimes I've learned now, if he says something, to just kind of be like, okay, like I might understand this later. And let me tell you, I did. Literally, maybe we were married 7, 8 years at the time. This is set like 6 years later, maybe. I asked Rick like what happened at work that day, and he said, actually, today was a really cool day. Like I got to arrest like some guy that was robbing apartments. He was pretending to be a maintenance guy, going door to door, getting people to answer the door, and like at using a gun would like force entry and rob them. And it was a huge apartment complex, and Rick, you know, got to get a bad guy basically, right? But as he's telling me that story, I thought back to like when we were just married a couple years, just moving in together. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is why. Like, and so anyway, I'm reflecting on this recently with Rick, and he's like, yeah, that happens all the time. Like people pretend to be somebody else to get into something. And of course, that's why Rick felt the way he did, even though nothing ever happened, okay? The guy, the apartment complex guy, was a real maintenance guy, never came back for the guns, never came back to rob me, nothing like that. But I could see why Rick felt that way. And like in the future in our relationship, I tried to be careful of like scheduling any maintenance in the house. And really Rick usually deals with it. And then often he fixes it himself now that we have our own house. Or if he'll send us schedule something, he schedules it for when he's there. Like he's very aware of that. Or like moving companies, anybody, he's very aware, conscious to like just be here because he's more comfortable with that. Okay, so I share that story, and I share the fact that like I kind of understood and have more empathy for Rick's point of view 6 years later. Like that's crazy. So what that taught me is to kind of just not like blindly accept, but almost like some of the times when Rick says something about something that I just don't see it that way, kind of be like, okay, but I get it. You see it this way because of your work. I don't quite understand it, but try to accommodate him based on like based on what I don't know yet, and hope I understand it more later. Okay, so the next example of a moment in our marriage where I felt like maybe it could be perceived as controlling, and maybe I did at the time, was I was pregnant. I had Maverick, and he was just a little guy. I think he turned 6 months, and I was excited. I had planned like, okay, postpartum, I want to go jogging with Maverick. I had been walking with him in a stroller and like baby carrying him, going on walks, but I wanted to use the jogging stroller. We got approval from his pediatrician. So I told Rick, like just casually, like, hey, I'm gonna start jogging with Maverick. I'm so excited, you know? So like a day or two later, he comes home, or he is home already. It's been a while, but he shows me this map. And he's like, hey, you could jog here to here to here to here, like these blocks. And that's about however a mile or two or whatever it is. And I was like, like, why is he showing me where I should jog, right? That's kind of weird. And I said, yeah, that's interesting. You're showing me these roads because I really want to go over here. Where I wanted to jog was like this downtown area in the little like suburb that we lived in. And he was like, yeah, there's like crime that happens over there. I don't want you to go there for that. And that's why I'm showing you like, hey, these areas are okay. And there's like sidewalks or whatever. And you could jog there. So that was like also another learning moment where I like pushed back a little bit, and I was like, hey, I wanted to go over here. But I do not see things that he sees. Like we will drive through, and we were even looking through houses, looking to buy a house. And we go through a room, and he's like, do you see the person sleeping in there? And I was like, no, I was just looking at how big the closet was. Not even La La Land, okay? So I don't really, my background's social work, and I do try to see like the best in people, and I think there's roles for everyone. I think that Rick sees where the crime is. Like that's what he's out there to look for. That's not who I am or who I want to be, right? I think there's roles for everybody, and so I don't want to see the world the way that he sees it, but I need to understand it and empathize with it. And so for the jogging, like it's me and his baby, right? So I'm gonna listen, and I did jog like in the areas that he said were best to jog in. So that might be kind of tough, and it sounds weird. I'm really like an independent person, so it's kind of hard to talk about those things. But I think that if it's a reasonable request to accommodate, like kind of help them relax more, then go for it. Another thing that was really important that I didn't write down to talk to you guys about, but even when we were looking for homes, Rick really wanted a place that was safe, a neighborhood that was safe, that like, even though he actually lives 45 minutes away from, he works 45 minutes away from where we live, he wanted to know when he was home, he could just relax, right? And then same, that he could relax, that we were home safe in a nice, safe neighborhood. And then we also have the Ring doorbell, and Rick has the app on his phone. So even if he's working nights, like he's kind of keeping an eye on us in the house, which is like amazing, like having private security almost, right? Obviously he wouldn't be the one to come here if something happened. He would call our local police, but because he's so far away at work, but it helps him to relax, to kind of be away from where he works too. And that was something that's really important. So I have one more little story that's kind of related to what I'm talking about. And it's that he requested that we use a P.O. box, and it's kind of like, if you use a UPS, they have their own like boxes at UPS stores, and some of the other smaller mail stores in the US anyway, because I know some of you follow me from like other countries, I don't know if it's a little different, but a P.O. box is just like where you would rent a mailbox at a location. So he wanted us to use that versus our physical address for like anything, for mail, for Amazon, right? Like for shipping, for anything. And that is the one that I have pushed back on a lot, and he's kind of come around for. He was working gangs for a lot of his career, and so when we first got married and our boys were little, he was working gangs, and he said like a lot of times the gang members, they will like try to find cops who arrest them, who do things to them, and they'll have connections like at the DMV and be able to look up where you live. But if you are not using your address a lot, it's harder for them to do that. So that's why he wanted us to use the P.O. box. So we still have a P.O. box, and we use it, I would say, the majority of the time, but the home for me was like a really practical thing, that it was very convenient for me to have things shipped here, like for Amazon or whatever, because I have two young boys, especially when they were little, and it's like not easy to just jump in the car and go anywhere, and literally do anything. So, so we still do get mail here, but that was another thing that was really important to him, that's like kind of related to his work, that he wanted us to do. Something popped in my head, and it's a movie. It's called End of Watch, and in that movie, they actually interviewed people in his specific unit in the Los Angeles Metro Police, and they there is a scene, a couple scenes where they talk about like the gangs trying to come after and look up and find people, find the police that did something to them. So it kind of made it real when I saw that movie, even though Rick tells me. I think sometimes it's kind of nice, in a way it helps me to like see it in a movie. So it's not a happy movie, so watch it and then watch a comedy if you're gonna watch it. But that is all that I have for today. Thank you so much for watching. I usually post Mondays. I will try to keep that up. This one is going to be running late this week because I just had a lot of work last week going on. But always check me out on Instagram. I'm always active on my stories on there and post reels 3 times a week usually. So I hope you will check out my book. It is available on Amazon, hard or paperback, and also as Audible now, audiobook. So if you're busy like me, I listen to a lot of things versus sitting and reading, then it's available in that format as well, brand new. I also, you guys, on my website, I have a free Loving a Cop Guide ebook that you could check out, and I will link that below as well. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day.